Hey YouTube, this is Sean here from Takana Gardening. Today we're going to go over knife sharpening. Before I had ample space outside to do a garden, I've been sharpening knives now for about 5 years. This knife came in from one of my best friends. It's a vintage heirloom in their family. You can just, tell by this beautiful patina on it. I'm trying not to remove all of it, but just me working with some, paste on my fingers is removing some of it. But there'll be some other videos where we'll go over stones and setups and things right now. But I just want to do a quick sharpening video. In the heel, there was a large bump, and this knife was not making contact flat on a cutting board, so it was kind of useless. So I went ahead and removed that bump. So when you put the knife down on a flat surface, it makes perfect contact. So we're gonna go over. That was about. I did all that work on a 220 grit Kingstone. I actually like the Kingstones. They're inexpensive, especially for the lower grit. I think they're a little bit on the softer side, but for the price range and the work that they do, and you're really just going to beat up a 220 stone. So that's that. That's already been done. I redid the bevel on either side. I'm going to move up to a 700 grit stone, and then we'll move to a 3000 and a 6000. So the one thing you're probably really going to need is most important, other than the stones, is like a lapping stone. They have some diamond encrusted like atoma stones. They're very expensive, but this lapping stone you can get between $18 and $25, and it's an absolute necessity. It keeps your stone nice and flat, and that's just like one of the things that if you're going to get into whetstone sharpening, you're going to need a lapping stone. Don't make the mistake of not getting one, especially this one. I've had this one for 4 years and it's still, perfectly flat, and yeah, it does its job well. So the next thing is, now that this stone is nice and clean, there's a couple ways that people, do it. You can do, 2 pennies, touching here. That's more for like Japanese style knives that have a very low bevel degree, around 15 degrees. Most Western knives you'll see will be about 25. So we'll do a little higher. I think they say a nickel and a penny, or 3 pennies for the other one. But once you really get a hang of it, you really won't need the pennies. I guess for all the beginning sharpeners, when you sharpen a knife, for the most part, I'm gonna say for the most part, because the heel of the knife's always different, but you're gonna want like a nice 45-degree angle, maybe a little higher, because if you start sharpening knives like this way, you're sharpening a lot wider piece of steel, if you're doing it this way. And we will have to do it this way when you use the backhand, but unless you're ambidextrous, I recommend you using just your dominant hand to do all the sharpening. I don't think it's even worth your time wasting to try and do it left. And I've gotten good at it, but I've actually reverted back to just using my dominant hand. It's just, I think the results are so much better, and it just feels better because everything's with your dominant hand. So unless you're ambidextrous, we'll be sharpening with a push, and then we'll be sharpening with a pull on the reverse side. So let's have at it. And this move might seem advanced, but what I would recommend for first-time people is just go single pushes. And when you get tired of single pushes, probably be around your 10th or 11th push, you'll have that feeling of what it's like. So when you come back, you really shouldn't be putting any effort into pulling back, because we're sharpening on the pushing stroke and we're not sharpening on the pull stroke, because that's really just going to mess it up. So I would recommend going through single strokes until you get tired of doing single strokes, and by that time you have a good feeling of what that motion feels like. And then you're going to want your fingers on the part you're sharpening. I would pay good attention to the heel of the knife. That might be one place that beginning sharpeners miss. And then we'll start slowly working our way up. And then as you start getting, if you have a Western knife, or there's this round part in there, you'll need to sharpen one part of it, and then you'll need to like pick the knife up a little bit to get that other part. And as you get to the tip of the knife, you're gonna have to pick the backside up a little bit so you can kind of get that proper angle on it. And it's going to be a little tricky. I mean, it's all really about feeling it and doing it. You know, I've been doing this for quite a while, but you know, if you have inexpensive knives to begin with, you know, this is the perfect opportunity to do that, or go to Goodwill and just get some cheap beater knives that you can just figure this out. You're not going to be a professional, you know, on your first time around. But you know, what they say is practice makes perfect. So since I've already had the bevel already on there, I'm hoping that by my third pass, if you've noticed, I've been working up the knife, down the knife, and now I'm just back up the knife. So we should be feeling for a burr. Since we were sharpening with this side down, the burr should be up on this end. So, and that's, you know, a good indication of when you should, you know, flip over. I think I have a pretty good burr. You can feel this metal that like folds over. And then, so as I was saying, on the backside, with your dominant hand, you're gonna want to start off perfectly perpendicular to the stone where you can get this heel, and it's just important to you know, make sure that you're having your fingers contact here. As you do this, it would be the same thing with the push stroke. On the pull stroke, do about, you know, 10 to 15 of your pull strokes just to get a feeling for it. And once you get a feeling for it, you'll know that as you go back, you know, you shouldn't be pushing the knife into the stone. It's also important too that you are matching the angle that you sharpen on this side that you sharpened on this side with. So just keep that in mind, and just try to, you know, just really be conscious of your angle. And then, so as we go, I'll start moving into that 45-degree angle we were working at earlier. As I get to this hump, I'm gonna pick up the back end of the knife a little bit. And as I get to the tip, I will pick the back end of the knife up even higher. And as you're doing it, it's not gonna be perfect on your first time, but really try to use, you know, every spot on the stone so you're wearing it evenly. Wet stones can be expensive. You know, the lower grit stones are less expensive than the higher grit stones. So, and you'll probably go through, you know, if you're at home, if you're just sharpening your own knives, I mean, you could have stones that last you 10 years. I do more than just my home's knives. I do some for some other people. So I've gone through a couple lower grit stones. I've had this 700 grit stone for years now and haven't gone through it. So, you know, that's when it comes to, you know, that 220 stone. I mean, if you're going to beat it up, you know, you can get something like a king stone, or there's plenty of other knife sharpening or knife shops, I should say. But I prefer going to MTC Kitchen, and I am not paid by them in any way, but they typically run during the holidays some kind of deal where if you can get 25 or 30% off, you know, synthetic stones, it's definitely worth it. So let's see if we have the burr built up on the other side. And, you know, depending on how many passes you make to sharpen your knife is how dull it's going to be. But because I've already set the bevel with 220, I know that I've thinned that knife out pretty well, and I have a nice burr all the way down the knife now. So this was the side we just sharpened. Okay, so now we will move to a 3000 grit stone. I'll put this here. And also, when you're lapping a stone, for any stone up to 1000 grit, you know, you should lap this or flatten it, you know, with, you know, every single knife. So just keep that in mind. And as we get to a higher grit stone, like here, we have a Sigma 3000 and a Sigma 6000. These will probably get flattened every third or fourth knife. And these are not wet stones, these are splash and go stones. So you can keep them dry, and when you are ready to use them, you just put a little water on them. Make sure it soaks in quite a bit. You know, the other wet stones you can kind of leave in the water, and depending on which wet stone you have, some of them may go soft, so you don't want to permanently leave them in the water. Okay, so now we have our stone, we're here. And one thing I didn't do on the 700 grit stone was try to deburr this knife, but that's okay, we'll do it on this one. But as you're progressing through your stones, and it doesn't have to be a perfect like 200, 700, 1000, 3000, 6000, depending on the steel type, you kind of really got to figure it out. You know, I typically like going, 220 to a 1000 or a 700, and then, skipping a couple thousand grips in between. So that was one thing. And as we go through those different grits, you're putting less pressure on the knife as you are sharpening it, because you've already really made your you've already like thinned this knife quite a bit, and with the higher grits we're just polishing it and also making that edge less rough. So because most of the work has been done, you can use less pressure on your stones. And these are Sigma stones. I actually really love these stones. I got them on a good deal, but as I was saying, these higher grit stones last a lot longer, but they're also a lot more expensive. They can be anywhere from $40 to $60 more expensive than a 220 grit stone. I mean, as high as you go, I just go to 6,000 grit. That's because I'm not going to spend $120 or more on a 10,000 grit stone. I think 3,000 grit is probably a pretty good place to finish a stone, a finishing stone for a home user. 3,000 grit. You can definitely shave your arm hairs. Might shave my arm hair later, and you don't need to go through this huge expense of trying to get it like crazy sharp, like you're like a sushi chef or making sashimi or something. A 3,000 grit stone will definitely keep your knife very sharp. So we'll go one more pass here, and just not with too much pressure. We'll just go and with a 3,000 grit, depending on which 3,000 grit you have, you could probably still feel a burr. So as we start going down the knife, we will pick up the back end of the knife so we make nice contact with the stone. And another thing is, we want to be pushing like straight up the stone, even though the knife is on an angle. The real motion is this is the motion up the stone. Yeah, and I can feel my burr all the way across, and it's definitely polishing up nice too. And the rougher grit stones will leave some scratch marks, but as you start working your way up the stone and the grits of the stone, these other grits will really get those scratch marks out, and you'll get a near mirror polish on the bevel. And then I'm going this way, remember, because I have to get this heel. So even though I'm sharpening more, I will okay. And the one thing I didn't do on the 700 grit stone is try and get this bevel cleared out. And you can see, I mean, it's really kind of cleaned up now. So to deburr a knife, we will move to a leather stropping stone. I mean, a leather strop and some honing cream in a little bit. But we like to try and get the tip of the knife. And on my first one, and I don't know if this is what you're gonna see from other people, but because I have the burr on this side, because I had lastly just gone through this, probably my first two strokes, I'll do two this direction, I'll do one this direction, you know, I'll go back and I'll go 2 here. And then, you know, after that, I probably have the burr gone for the most part. So then I'll just start going 1 and 1. And as you start, you know, going down on passes, you don't have to spend a lot of time, but as you start, you know, going on, you can use like less and less pressure, because we really don't want to be taking any more material off other than the burr. So we'll do that. Now, for the brevity of this video, I am going to move on to my 6,000 grit. But say you are, say you had made your final pass, what you can do is, and this is going to be another thing that I think is definitely worth having, is a leather strap. Obviously, this is not a fancy strap, but you know, someone gave me a sharpening kit that, you know, wasn't that great, but this thing in here was absolutely great, and I probably, you know, one of the most useful things I have. So you'll definitely recommend getting one. You don't need to get some crazy leather strap from like a barber shop that, you know, is $90, $100, though they are nice to have. You know, if that's not in your budget, you can, you know, get some lower ones. And then I'm just gonna make a couple passes to get this lower. And I also have some honing cream here. I have a, I do have a Tormac sharpener, and there is Tormac polishing paste on here. It's also a bit abrasive, so it's good for getting the that burr off too. And let's see, hopefully I don't make this dirty again, but yeah, we should be, you know, feel sharp. Don't recommend you trying to see if this is a good way to sharpen your knife, but as you can see, you know, we are shaving. All right, thanks everyone. That's my little tutorial on knife sharpening. There are plenty of other great videos on knife sharpening. Some of them being from the Cornyn store, who very traditional Japanese knife stores and sharpening. We also, you know, Burrfection's another great one on YouTube, and also Sharp Knife Shop has some great videos too. And you also have Knifeware. I think NATO's their head sharpener, and he's definitely very more technical. But you know, if you're starting off, I would kind of, you know, be mindful of all the things we went over, and I would just predominantly use your dominant hand. A lot of these other people you're gonna watch have been doing sharpening for, you know, decades probably, and they're more on the ambidextrous side, or say they're on the ambidextrous side, but just remember, you know, we're using our push stroke on this side, and then our pull stroke here. And yeah, I don't know if you can see that, there's still some hair on there. So thanks a lot, appreciate it.